Today, we're diving into a popular post from the Reddit titled as, "I've had a 71-year career in nuclear energy and have seen many setbacks but believe strongly that nuclear power can provide a clean, reliable, and relatively inexpensive source of energy to the world." AMA. This post received 57,928 upvotes. Posted by Jogan. The post reads as follows. "I've been involved in nuclear energy since 1947. In that year, I started working on nuclear energy at Argonne National Laboratories on safe and effective handling of spent nuclear fuel. In 2018 I retired from government work at the age of 92, but I continue to be involved in learning and educating about safe nuclear power. After my time at Argonne, I obtained a doctorate in chemical engineering from MIT and was an assistant professor there for 4 years. Worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory for 18 years where I served as the Deputy Director of Chemical Technology Division. Then for the Atomic Energy Commission starting in 1972, where I served as the Director of General Energy Development. In 1984 I was working for the Office of Civilian Radioactive Waste Management, trying to develop a long-term program for nuclear waste repositories, which was going well but was ultimately cancelled due to political opposition. Since that time I've been working primarily in the U.S. Department of Energy on nuclear waste management broadly, recovery of unused energy, safe disposal, and trying as much as possible to be in touch with similar programs in other parts of the world: Russia, Canada, Japan, France, Finland, etc. I try to visit and talk with people involved with those programs to learn and help steer the U.S.'s efforts in the right direction. My daughter and son-in-law will be helping me manage this AMA, reading questions to me and inputting my answers on my behalf. Edit. This is also being posted from my son-in-law's account, as I do not have a Reddit account of my own. Ask me anything. Proof. https://i.imager.com/fg1d9nv.jpg. Edit 1. After about 3 hours we are now wrapping up. This was fun. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It's nice to be asked the questions and I hope I can provide useful information to people. I love to just share what I know and help the field if I can do it. Edit 2. Son-in-law and AMA assistant here. I notice many questions about nuclear waste disposal. I will highlight this answer that includes thoughts on the topic. Edit 3. Answered one more batch of questions today, Monday afternoon. Thank you all for your questions. A comment from user Bedside Tiger says, "In your opinion, which country is leading the charge in nuclear energy and which country do you think will pull ahead in the future?" This comment received 805 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "The answer for both of these is China. China is definitely leading the charge at the moment. They are leading the commitments to design, build, and operate reactors. And I see no slackening of interest in that country for continued expansion. When my wife and I were there last, the air pollution problem in Shanghai was serious. And ultimately I think what China realizes is the sooner they can expand their nuclear power, the better the environment will be, especially in the larger cities. Obviously their economy is growing rapidly, and any growing economy requires a growth in electrical energy. Most of China's power currently comes from coal, but nuclear can step in and take some of that burden." This reply received 1482 upvotes. A comment from user The Windstore says, "With construction costs for large-scale plants becoming prohibitive, at least in the US, are small modular reactors the future of nuclear?" This comment received 2290 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Interesting question. There is a large nuclear power plant being built today in spite of the so-called incredibly high prices, and I'm talking about in America. So I'm not convinced that it is priced out of reach. Small reactors still have a higher cost per kilowatt hour. They are a more expensive source of energy than large reactors. However, they have one virtue which really attracts people. They can be built in increments and get online sooner. Big reactors can get delayed and the whole time you're paying ongoing construction costs. There's no question that being able to get online and get some income while doing increments, that is an advantage. In the long run, that may turn out to be an overwhelming advantage that gives small-scale reactors a better bet. This reply received 2753 upvotes. A comment from user Snow Teenager says, "Can nuclear energy power cars and trucks? What's your thoughts on that? And what do you think? How many years it takes roughly estimating if it's possible?" This comment received 355 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Oh, okay. That's a good question. The answer is yes, but they do it by creating the energy in central stations and using it to charge batteries. There is no question that electricity can drive vehicles. We already know that. We're doing it. It's the source. An electric transported vehicle, broadly speaking, depends on the source. If you get the electricity from a gasoline engine that's mounted in the car, ultimately the energy is based upon gasoline. If you operate a car with a plug-in that allows you to go 200 or 300 miles, it's the source of that electricity. In DC we have 2 or 3 nuclear power plants that produce maybe 30% of the electricity. People that plug in their electric car are taking electricity from the grid, and 30% of that in the DC area is nuclear. This reply received 610 upvotes. A comment from user moist_wet_socks says, "What were the obstacles you faced when Chernobyl happened? Also, were your own beliefs affected by Chernobyl?" This comment received 512 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "I was personally not impacted professionally. I was saddened because a preventable accident, and that particular reactor didn't have the kind of containment that all of our nuclear power plants have in the US, and that's true of almost everywhere, including Russia now." This reply received 872 upvotes. A comment from user Payne747 says, "Theoretically, how small do you imagine reactors could become?" This comment received 202 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Well, there's some effort now to develop what is called a microreactor. It's principally for defense use, for locations that might require a power source that can operate several years without having to rely on external supplies like a power grid or flying in diesel fuel. That's under study at Idaho National Laboratory. But what most intrigues me is the idea that you could provide power in a location and then remove it. There are plenty of places, particularly in Africa, that do not have electricity. It could be supplied nicely in a concept of a transportable system, but we're looking at decades for this to be developed." This reply received 377 upvotes. A comment from user small_h_hippie says, "How was the design of nuclear reactors changed through the years? Do you think it will ever be safe to use nuclear power where you might get an earthquake?" This comment received 183 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Improved reactor containment is the most important change that has come about. Very, very good design of reactor containment systems, due to excellent independent analyses of the safety systems. I'm very impressed with the great care the Nuclear Regulatory Commission puts into making nuclear operations more broadly safe, whether it's nuclear medicine, storing fuel safely, reviewing long-term safety of waste disposal, etc. These containment practices include the analysis associated with an earthquake. There was a devastating earthquake on the western shore of Japan that caused the shutdown of many reactors. And those reactors were safely shut down. This was a good demonstration of the fact that if you design for such an occurrence, you can survive it." This reply received 321 upvotes. A comment from user Akaimre says, "In your opinion, what are the biggest downsides of nuclear energy? As a layperson I know it costs a ton, but what else?" This comment received 829 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Costs a ton. Haha. Until we actually demonstrate the will, and I won't say what kind of will, I just mean the actual backbone, to actually dispose permanently, for the next 1,000 years, the nuclear waste in the country. We now have in excess of 70,000, probably 80,000 tons of spent, used fuel. It's the biggest drawback. Until we have a functioning disposal system, it's going to continue to be a negative for nuclear power in America. Quite frankly, the Yucca Mountain project was killed because of lack of political strength. It was said to be safe by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and yet at this point we have put off solving that problem. This reply received 1584 upvotes. A comment from user Nemo69_1999 says, "Are you one of those liquid thorium salt reactor guys?" This comment received 442 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "I am not a guy associated with any particular reactor design, but I happen to know a little bit about liquid thorium. A long time ago, when I was at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, there was an effort to develop a molten salt reactor. A long time ago. I left there in 1972. In these experimental efforts, the reactor actually operated successfully, and it actually involved thorium. But there are many problems to be solved, and it did not prove a commercial feasibility, and there is a lot of work to do improving materials of construction that will withstand the environment, and long-term stabilizing of the system. It's a longer shot than other approaches, but is still feasible." This reply received 719 upvotes. A comment from user Quintessential17 says, "Where do you see the future of nuclear energy going?" This comment received 180 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "It's hard to tell. For example, Germany has decided to abandon nuclear power even though they were one of the early adopters. But there are other countries. My favorite example is China. China thinks that nuclear power is going to be very important for them for a long time. They're building more reactors than any other country in the world. And I think they're building safe systems. Some parts of the world have essentially made a commitment that it'll be an important part of their energy for a long time. At the moment, 75% of all power in France is nuclear. It's an unusual situation. They don't have as many reactors as the US, but they decided decades ago to make that their primary source of energy. But it's interesting that they're shutting down old reactors, and have a commitment to reduce their dependence on nuclear power to 50%, whether it's hydro or coal or natural gas. I don't think they're going to save money, and it doesn't necessarily improve the environment, but much of their constituency feels 75% is just too high of an amount." This reply received 445 upvotes. A comment from user Umber0010 says, "What's the dumbest reason you've seen someone give for why we shouldn't go nuclear? Bonus points if it's not the standard mutants, wasteland, cancer shtick." This comment received 899 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "The argument that we don't have a way of disposing of the waste. People use the argument that we don't have a good way of waste disposal to say, don't go down that pathway. But we do. It is being done today in Finland, and it is being done under conditions that are similar to ours. It's an opinion and there are going to be other opinions. But that's mine." This reply received 1366 upvotes. A comment from user the_man_in_black says, "What happens to a nuclear plant in the event of no humans to maintain it? Would it melt down and leak radiation like Chernobyl? When humans are gone, will nuclear plants have long-term, adverse effects on wildlife?" This comment received 311 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "In my judgment, no. But that requires some advance work. You have to plan for the cooling process to be done without humans. Right now the plants we design do require maintenance after shutdown. But we do have plants, for example one I visited in Dresden, which have been shut down and are safe, with no additional work required to keep them from melting. They still have guards to prevent anyone from tampering with it, but do not otherwise require additional maintenance. Also, this is important. 1.8 billion years ago there was a natural nuclear reactor that operated in what is now the country of Gabon in Western Africa. It operated for hundreds of thousands of years, shut down itself, produced a ton of plutonium, and life has since done pretty well." This reply received 695 upvotes. A comment from user Nicenadal2 says, "Do you have any solutions for nuclear waste? This comment received 203 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "Yes, I worked for 16 years on the Yucca Mountain project in Nevada, which I'm convinced is a safe location to dispose of nuclear waste. At the Office of Civilian Radioactive Waste Management, OCRWM, we did a site study and identified Yucca Mountain in Nevada as a site for nuclear waste disposal. This was right next to a nuclear test site where 900 nuclear tests had been done with no containment. So a well-contained waste disposal site should have been very safe. Our research included a performance assessment showing it would handle waste safely for at least 50,000 years. Not only should be perfectly safe, but as a backup there could be test wells in the nearby land to monitor the aquifer, 1,000 feet below the repository site anyway, that would detect if there was any radioactivity present in the aquifer, and if it were detected, that could be removed using ion exchange. But the most important thing about this site, from a long-term perspective, is that the aquifer drained into Death Valley. It didn't drain into the Colorado River or any other water source that would cause any problems 100,000 years from now." This reply received 547 upvotes. A comment from user The Snappening says, "Did you considering leaving the field after Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island or Fukushima?" This comment received 123 upvotes. A reply from the original author Jogan says, "No, no. What I felt was chagrin and unhappiness that the design features of those reactors contributed to the accidents. For example, in the case of Fukushima, it saddened me that they lost their auxiliary power, when if they had put their auxiliary power up on a hill behind the plant, with simple wire connections, the disaster would have been prevented. But it was located in the basement, and there was a flood. Japan now has an independent safety review organization, and have 50 shut-down reactors that are very slowly being put back online. In the US, in 1975 it was decided the Atomic Energy Commission should not be both the developer and reviewer of nuclear power plants. And as a result, since then, there have been no deaths of any Americans as a result of our nuclear power grid. That includes all the power that has been generated on submarines and aircraft carriers." This reply received 373 upvotes.